All right, welcome back to our part two of our Airbnb segment. Once again, I'm your co-host, Willis Woods, aka Mr. Willis Closet. I have Mr. Money Blunt. I have Mr. Sheridan McCorkle, and our guest I want to say expert in Airbnb management services, Mr. Tyler Shirk, with Brown Bear Real Estate. Everything. Right, so when you were saying Lee Summit usually performs well, but they have to be in a certain radius of downtown Lee Summit. What does typically that radius look like?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't deal with the permitting side of it. I can look online. I can go online and find out for you. But I've been told, I've heard a couple times, it's like a couple miles of downtown, a couple blocks, something along those lines. But it's all online. My company, we keep up to date with what's going on with the permits, but we don't permit the units for our clients because it's too time consuming. And also, one of the best ways to be able to get your unit permitted and not have problems is to go meet your neighbors and talk to them. Let them know that it's going to be done the right way. You're here. Give them your number if there's a problem. So we want our clients to go build those relationships with their neighbors.
So they're not calling the police. Like, hey, these people over
there. Yeah, they'll do. Sometimes the neighbors get upset, but the neighbors get upset when it's not being properly managed.
Right.
When there's parties going on, when there's people showing up at 3 o'clock in the morning drunk and all that. That's when the neighbors get upset. So we want our clients to have those relationships with their neighbors so that those neighbors don't just feel like they don't have anybody to call, because that's when they call the cops. But if they can call my client and then my client can call us and we can resolve it, then everything's usually fine.
I was curious. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we were talking about kind of where someone would start, like if they wanted to start an Airbnb, kind of. I know we were talking about like the different locations in Kansas City and where and how certain areas perform better. But what would be necessarily the process for, like, okay, so I've now found my location. I know that I want to have an Airbnb in, Lee Summit or whatever. This is where I want to have my Airbnb. And I know that obviously depending on where you're at, some places require permits, some places don't. So what would be, like, do you recommend starting with kind of like, because I know some people go the route of they purchase the property, they own the property. Some people go the route of kind of, I guess you can call it subleasing, where they kind of like they rent an apartment out and then they Airbnb that apartment out. So what would you say would be what you think is the smartest option or route to go if you were starting that? Because I know there's like hard money lenders, and then there's just kind of regular residential, like I just bought this house through a mortgage. What would you recommend to start?
Myself, honestly, I would probably, it makes the most financial sense, especially if you just want to see what it's like, see if you can make money. I would try to go, what you were talking about with the subleasing is called arbitrage.
Okay.
That's what it's called within the Airbnb community. But basically, if you have a house for rent, I come to you like, hey, I want to rent your house, and then I'm going to put it on Airbnb. I'll take care of all the maintenance. I'll clean it twice a week. I'm going to take care of it. So if it were me, I would go find somebody, probably a private owner,
right?
Because it's hard to go through the corporate stuff. I would go and shoot my shot with them and say, hey, here's what I want to do, and here's how it's going to happen. With me, I would say I got 6 years of experience. But if I was somebody that hadn't been doing it, I got a manager that has 6 years of experience, something along those. But I would, make them feel comfortable, let them know, and then I would arbitrage it.
Gotcha. So how much is the person who is the private owner making? Are they just making the regular rent?
They're just making the regular rent.
Yeah.
But in some cases, they work out deals. So like some of them, some people want different things out of a relationship. Some people, just give me my $1,500 a month for rent and we're cool. Some people are like, well, I want $1,500 plus 10% of how much you make.
Right.
So you just got to figure out those numbers, figure out that relationship with them. Okay. But that's where I would start, especially if I was looking to save as much money as I could.
Right.
I would arbitrage it. I'd buy the furniture. I'd put it in there. I'd let it run, see how it does, and then I would just save my money, and then I would eventually start buying my own.
Gotcha.
So a question with that. Now, I remember you had mentioned, because you said buy your own furniture and things like that, you had mentioned that the one thing people do is they go cheap when they try to furnish an Airbnb. When you typically, and your company starts furnishing it, what is the typical ballpark figure that you're spending on furnishing it to where, because I've seen some of these places that you've done, and they're absolutely beautiful. Like, there was that pink one. I don't know what it was. It was super cute. I was like, I was talking about, I was like,
it's always funny to me when Willis say it's super cute.
It was. I was showing my wife. I was like, this is cute. I was like, you see something like this in like Atlanta, where it's like those type of cities, Houston and things like Miami. That it really gave me a Miami vibe there, but it's here. And so my question is like, what is a ballpark figure? And I don't need you to disclose exact figures, but ballpark. What do you advise when spending so they understand that throwing this cheap stuff together and hoping to make it work.
So, I mean, you hit on a couple points there, and I'm very open and honest. I'll tell y'all exactly what I spend on them. But one of the main things that you hit on was how you were talking about it's unique. That's what you have to do in order for your Airbnb to be successful. So Kansas City used to be, you just rolled that thing out, put it on there, and you made money. Because there wasn't that many of them.
Yeah.
But in every market, like you said, Atlanta, all these other markets, as they became more popular and more people had them, there's a lot more competition out there. So you have to earn that client. Yeah. So if you're on Airbnb looking for a place and you go through 3 that have gray walls and gray furniture, and then you see mine with the pink wall and the cactus
gray
and all that, you're going to see that stuff, and you're going to be like, it's basically the same price. I'm going to book that one.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to set yours apart. We put Instagram walls in every single one of our units.
Yeah.
We put our little arcades that you get at Nebraska Furniture Mart. They're $500 a piece. You got to make your stuff stand out. But I can tell you, like, just on average, for like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, I'm going to charge my clients somewhere around $28,000, and I'm going to spend about $20,000.
Okay.
I like that because, like, I feel like when I've gone to Airbnbs, I can tell, like, why didn't you just do a nice mattress? Like, I'm like, this is hard as hell. I'm so used to a nice little Marriott bed. They known for their beds.
We have specific ones we use and all of that. You know, like we don't use like a regular box spring and a regular mattress. We get those 16. I think they're either 8 or 16 something inch thick foam mattresses. They're called Zionist, and there's another one called Vibe. We get those and we put them in every single one of our units specifically because the guests comment, oh, this is the most comfortable bed I ever slept on. This is the best bed I ever slept on. They love it. That's how you get more bookings. That's how you make more money. It's a bunch of little stuff like that. And it's not a problem. It's just people just don't know. They haven't been doing it long enough. They don't know to put these specific things in there, to spend the money on this. Because there's a couple things when people are looking, you can tell in the pictures if the furniture's cheap. You can tell if it's uncomfortable. Then you get there and you sit on it and it's like a rock. You're not happy. So you ain't coming back. Right. And you're also not telling your friends to book it. And you're also not leaving a good review.
Right.
So, I would say, I'm not in your shoes, but I would say hire a designer too. Because I'll look at some of them. Like when I stayed at an Airbnb in Atlanta back in October. And it was okay. I just like the fact that it was in Buckhead. It was literally in walking distance. Like the mall was across the street. And I was just like, this looks so cheesy to me. Like, how whack. It's cute, but it just looked like, homegirl went to TJ Maxx and was putting it together herself.
Right.
And that's fine. I'm not down in it, but it didn't give me Buckhead. It just gave me...
People want the
It wasn't
the
giving
vibe.
what it was supposed to give.
Yeah, like I stayed at Intercontinental and I stayed at the Airbnb. I put my mom up at the Airbnb. And when I was done with my conference, I stayed at the Airbnb after. And I was like, I kind of want to go back to the Intercontinental. This is a great view. It's a cute little loft. They got some nice, amenities, but it was so uncomfortable and the furniture was so cheesy to me.
Because that's the struggle, real quick, that I know, like, a lot of people have, like Sheridan, is when I go out of town, do I just book a hotel or do I get an Airbnb? And, like, for me, every time I travel, unless I'm, like, on a guy's trip or it's just me and the wife, like, most times I'm getting an Airbnb because I have my kids with me. And just having the extra space, I really don't have to worry about being cramped up in a hotel room unless I go get a penthouse suite or something like that. Right. But for the most part, the Airbnb does afford me. So when I do book, obviously I'm looking through there, and I want something that's like, oh, this is nice. Like, because the pictures, but that's also
home
in real
or
estate.
better.
Yeah, it feels homey.
Yeah.
But that's the one thing, even with our clients, that we tell them when we do listings. I'm like, the pictures are the first things that's going to capture a buyer. They're going to see this with their eyes, and they're like, oh, this, I could see myself here. They're only coming here to look at your property to verify in person what they saw on pictures.
Right.
In that regards here. So for you, like I said, you spend the quality, and you don't cut corners. Because I was watching your post, and you had mentioned how you had a client that was with you, and they were performing amazing. And you screenshot, and that's the one thing I will applaud you, is that you don't just say what's going on. You'll show receipts. You'll show proof. Yeah. And when you did that, you showed how when they were making, I think it was like 75, 80 grand a year with you, and then your fee they felt like was too high, so they went to someone else who was much more affordable, I guess, if that's the word you even want to use.
2% cheaper.
Get what you pay for.
2% cheaper.
But the quality, and then you started posting the reviews and things like that the people were saying that the new people took over, and you were like, and so for me, I don't mind spending money. I don't mind spending the money if I feel like I'm getting quality and I'm getting my money's worth.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll spend whatever, and especially that's the one thing I will tell potential Airbnb host and things like that. You get what you pay for. You want to go cheap, you want to save $1.
Buy cheap, you buy twice.
In that regards here. So for you, what advice or argument would you put with people that feel like they want to manage it themselves versus paying you your cut to be able to manage it for them?
Right. That's something I deal with all the time. Like, I totally get it. I'm an investor too. I want to save money. Anywhere that we can save money is great for everybody, right? Like, if I can manage it myself and make the same amount of money, then I should manage it myself. But if you don't have the experience, the knowledge, the wisdom of doing it and understand the proper way to do it, you're costing yourself money. You can go and open up an Airbnb tomorrow and have no experience doing it, and you can make a little bit of money. You can do okay. But if you want to make the most money and get the most ROI out of it, you got to know what you're doing.
And that's return on investment for everybody. The ROI is return on investment.
You got to know what you're doing. And I'm not special. I've just been doing it a long time. I know how to do it. So we have a pricing software called Price Labs that we go in and
I was going to ask that. How do you figure out prices when you do, especially like you do in 8 different states, you have over 100 different properties. How are you able to price out what is doing what in what area in that regards here? Like, how is that something that you're able to do?
So one of the things that we do is we use a software called Price Labs. What Price Labs is Price Labs is I'm not the most technologically, I'm a little slow with technology, but this thing's smarter than me. It's somebody smarter than me built this piece of software that's tied into all of the other short-term rentals in whatever area. It's a proven software. It's been out for a long time. A lot of people use it. But basically, if you're my client and you're like, hey, I never want to rent my place for less than $150 a night, I'm going to go into my pricing software and I'm going to put my minimum at $150, and then I'm going to study the market. Studying the market is just basically looking at all of the other units in the area that are like a comp, like running comps as a realtor. I'm going to run those comps and I'm going to say, all right, this unit, and this unit are going for $250 a night or $300 a night. So I'm going to put my base price at something similar because that's what's winning in the market. Those are the ones that are currently getting bookings. And then the really cool thing about Price Labs is tied into all of the events in the area, football games, baseball games, concerts, anything and everything that's going on.
Beyonce coming?
You'll see my
those
price.
Prices up.
You'll see my price, and my software automatically does that.
And it'll adjust it for things coming. Nice.
So, like, if all of the other Airbnbs around mine are booked for this weekend, my prices are going way up.
I know that's right.
Because there's nothing else up there, and it automatically does it every 12 hours.
Oh,
Wow.
So every 12 hours, that software goes in and adjusts
How
my
much
price.
does that software like that run you? I'm a new investor. I'm interested in Airbnb. I want to invest in my business.
It's $10 per unit per month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's affordable. So it's not. It's not.
We need to be smarter than him and make a software like that and charge. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
But those
I
are
thought it was.
just
I thought it
things-
was super expensive with the way that it does so much.
Yeah, it sounds
Right.
like something's going to be about $5.99 a month.
So it
So a $120 investment to know how to maximize the price of your Airbnb.
And you don't even have to manually go in and change it, do you? I
Well,
think you
so
said-
there's a little bit more to it. Like, so it'll do that, and it's just like how I said, you can throw your Airbnb, you can make money, but there's a deeper portion of
Gotcha,
it, right?
okay.
So like what we do is, all right, if you're trying to book my place 6 months out in advance, it's 40% higher than what it's going to be now, and then every day it gets closer to this day, the price is discounted a little bit.
Gotcha.
So it automatically builds those discounts or those elevated prices in, depending on where we're at in the calendar.
Nice.
But I had to build those formulas in the system for that to work, right? There's a lot of stuff like that. Then it has like orphan days. So if, let's say your unit is booked April 10th through April 15th, and then April 17th through April 30th, right? You got that one day in there that's not booked, right? So it's going to automatically be like $100. Come book it for the night.
Right.
And it's going to give that discount so that you can
And
get
you
a
don't
full
even have to
occupancy.
really think about it because you already built that in on the back end.
I had to build the system. I have to monitor the system, make sure it doesn't break and do all of that. But I go in and I adjust the prices, the base price, once a week because people typically book on Saturdays and Sundays. Like that's when they're looking to book. So I'll go in every weekend and adjust, like maybe my base price was $150 and I look at the market again and see how much occupancy everybody has. And then I'll be like, all right, we're going to take it down to $10, $15, or we're going to raise it up $10, $15.
Gotcha.
That's That's amazing. Like I said, because when you first started going, I was like, I know this software about to be expensive. You know,
I know. I was waiting on that
and
too.
I was just waiting on some couple $1,000, you know, to get, but $10 a unit.
It has a like a scalable price. So like if you only have one unit, it might be like $20, but it's still very affordable.
But the more you
get,
yeah.
the cheaper it is.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
mine's down to like $8, but I think the most it is like $30.
So real quick, as before we wrap up, because you know we're gonna come back with a part 3, but a question I wanted to ask you is how do you set your prices? Even though obviously there's people that's probably more affordable, you're probably not the most expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But what are you charging to manage these Airbnbs, the units, and things like that, and kind of go from there?
So I'm currently charging 20%. 20% is kind of middle of the road. I charge 20% of the income the unit brings in a month. So if it makes $5,000, I charge 20% of that $5,000. But I used to, when I first started, and this is a whole another rabbit hole, I used to charge a flat rate. I charged $450 a month to manage your unit. And then as the market got more competitive, because more and more Airbnbs have came, I've had to implement these systems. Some of these systems that I have now I didn't used to have, because like I said, it was like just opening up your unit and you'd get booked. But since the market became competitive and I had to buy more software, hire more people, deliver a better product to make sure that my units are performing better than others, it cost me more money to do, and I just couldn't manage them for $450 a month anymore. So I started looking at what my big thing when I first started is all of my competitors charged a percentage. Some charge 15, some charge 20, some charge 30. My big thing is I charge a flat rate, so you always know what you're paying. That was what I built a lot of my stuff on.
Right.
But then when I figured out those numbers didn't make sense, I went to 20%.
Yesterday's price is not today's
Hey,
price.
you better let them know. So, you know, as we wrap up this episode, so we will come back because there's some things that we want to ask in our next one, because I know there's some regulations and things that are out there, especially like you hear what's happening in Atlanta where they're limiting the amount of Airbnbs that certain people can own and different things like that. So I know that was a real big hot topic coming up, and there's other things that we definitely want to get into. So, you know, we are going to go ahead and step away for part 2. We will be back with part 3, but once again, like, share, subscribe, write in
Send
comments.
us your questions.
You know, we will definitely be back with Tyler with part 3 of our Airbnb episode. Once again, we are the 4Real Podcast, and we gone.